Good morning and welcome to the Parents Under Pressure UK webinar. Today we're going to talk through some of the updates that we've been doing in the Parents Under Pressure program in 2020. So thank you for joining us. So the plan for today is to revisit the integrated theoretical framework for those of you who are PuP practitioners and are familiar with it, and to introduce those of you to the integrated theoretical framework who are perhaps less familiar with the PuP program. We're also going to be looking at the development of child self-regulation, cover briefly some of the areas around trauma, and also think about going forward with our PuP for Dads program. And I'll tell you a little bit about what's been happening in Scotland. But first, 2020 has been a big year for us all. And we've been very aware of the complexities for frontline practitioners and for the families that they support. So over the course of the last couple of months, we've revisited our online toolkit and uploaded resources. And we've also developed an online training process. And we've hoped that along the way that's continued to support our PuP practitioners in the really important and valuable work that you do supporting families. So the first bit of the webinar, I'm just going to focus on the integrated theoretical framework. And here in a way, we start at the beginning and this is the end. So this is the total integrated theoretical framework. But when we deconstruct the framework, if you like, and look at its component parts, the first and most important part is looking at child developmental outcomes. This is really central to the Parents Under Pressure program. We want kids to be the best that they can be, and that is our ultimate goal. Many parenting programs focus on behavior management and teaching parents strategies and carers strategies for how to manage complex behavior problems. But if we step back a little bit and think a little bit more carefully about what we mean by behavior problems, we often really mean development of self-regulation. And children who have good self-regulation are actually able to manage their behavior in a range of different situations. So we're going to go back to this idea of self-regulation a little bit later on in our webinar. But for now, let's carry on working through our integrated theoretical framework. And really the most proximal influence on good child developmental outcomes is the quality of the caregiving relationship. Children need to feel loved and safe. And so one of the key components of the PuP program is looking at the quality of the caregiving relationship and how that supports child developmental outcomes. So how do we do that? Well, one of the things that's really important is to look at how you describe the quality of the caregiving relationship. And in some respects, attachment styles have been widely used in research and clinical literature. But we prefer to think about a slightly different way of describing the quality of caregiving, which draws from emotional availability constructs. It's the minute-to-minute interaction that you see between a caregiver and a child that really matters. And what this does is help you move away from a judgment about the parenting is good, the parenting is bad, to a much more nuanced approach around describing the areas of complexity and the areas of strength. And really, if we think about quality of caregiving and emotional availability, we draw very much from the constructs that have been articulated by Zeynep Burican. And Burican classifies her emotional availability constructs around these 6 components. So you're thinking about sensitivity. You're really looking for warmth. You're looking for a parent who's attuned to the child's cues. It kind of picks up their signals. You're looking for structuring, the opportunity that the child has to support their development to the next developmental level. You're looking, of course, for non-intrusiveness, the parent who kind of gets when to come in or when to move away in a non-hostile way. But the thing that we like particularly about Zeynep Berrigan's emotional availability constructs is the focus on the child. Child responsiveness. How is the child responding to the parent? And perhaps as more importantly, how is the child engaging the parent? Now I'm going to show you a brief video. It's just a little YouTube clip, and many of you will have seen this already. But what I'd like you to do is just watch briefly for about a minute and think about these 6 constructs.
Oh, no, not this one. This is the grand finale of this. Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're going to do next season because they did some stuff this time. Exactly what I was thinking. Oh, yeah. Right, don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was thinking that, yeah. Yeah. Like, go somewhere else with that, but don't bring it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I said. Then it was like, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, what in the world? But don't do it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh?
So, what was so adorable about that? Well, there was warmth and there was a lovely attunement to the child's cues. The structuring was happening. This was all of the foundations that you need for language. There was the gesture, there was the reply, sometimes called the serve and return of parent-child interaction. There was space for the little E. You know, he wasn't overwhelmed. Dad wasn't intrusive at all. There were moments of sort of quietness and stillness where they just both kind of sat there looking at the telly. But the thing, of course, that I think is most adorable about this video is the way in which the child is engaging and leading, in fact, the play. Often the child's initiating the gesture and you see Dad picking up on it. So what we have by using emotional availability constructs is a toolkit, a set of ways of understanding and feeding back to parents what the strengths are in a particular interaction. And where there are challenges in the interaction, we can become clearer about what it is that those challenges are and how we can support the parent. So moving on from our yellow circle is our blue circle. And this is where often traditionally you'll see the focus in behavioral parent training programs. This really is around parenting knowledge. Do you know how to discipline? Do you know how to set limits? Do you know how to set rules and monitoring and family routines? But more important to us is actually parenting values and expectations. So what we really want to know is what the parent values most. What are their expectations for when their little E grows up? What did that dad want for that little boy when he was 12? And in asking that question, we start to unpack values. I want him to be good at school. I want him to be sporty. I want him to have lots of friends. Each of those represents and reflects core values that you can tap into as a practitioner that will help you setting goals. But not all of us are regulated all of the time. And so what we need to do is to be able to manage our emotions in the parenting context. We need to know when we're feeling overwhelmed, and we need ways of managing that and calming down. And a lot of the parents that we work with actually have great struggles in managing emotion regulation. And when you are really overwhelmed, or if you're very reactive and you become very hostile or very angry very quickly, it's really, really difficult to do the inner circles. It's really difficult to be sensitive to your child's needs and to be nurturing. And it's equally difficult to kind of maintain routines when you're very stressed, or to respond appropriately to situations where there's potential conflict. So we really need to understand parental emotion regulation and address that in the context of the PuP program. And many of the families that we work with come to parenting with a range of adverse childhood experiences themselves, and many of them with ongoing, enduring stress. So our emotion regulation strategies have to extend beyond just calming down to helping parents really understand what some of those triggers may be for their trauma, and what some of those triggers may be that escalates and makes them feel overwhelmed. A lot of the parents that we see feel as though they're living in a state of hyperarousal. It's a sort of flight-fight response. And in order to be able to recognize and manage those emotions, often we need to think about what some of the underlying traumatic experiences were. And we'll talk about that in a future webinar. The next domain of the integrated theoretical framework is what we call our Connectedness Circle. This is where we talk about connectedness to family, to culture, to faith, and to community. And for some families, this can be an area of great strength and perhaps something where you want to enhance or help reconnection. In other families, there are some really significant obstacles that need to also be addressed and thought through. And we all live in the real world. And, if homelessness is imminent, the best parenting program in the world is not really going to help unless it also addresses the issues around being homeless. And not in a way where you take over and just say, let me sort out the housing, but rather in a much more therapeutic and collaborative way. So housing crisis needs to be solved. How it's solved within the PuP context is about using the housing crisis as a therapeutic opportunity to support the parent around some emotion regulation, some problem solving, and to really support them to taking the steps that they're able to take at that point in time. And again, this is a judgment call on the part of practitioners. There are going to be some families who need much, much, much more support in this particular crisis than other families. But trying to hand over power and sharing the problem solving is really key. And so there we come to our integrated theoretical framework. The next question then is, well, how does PuP work? Here we've got this framework where you're assessing a range of different domains, where you're identifying challenges and areas of great strength. So we want to use our framework to look at points of entry and to identify goals. So what's doing PuP? If we think about the situation where we're talking about the family, where there's a housing crisis and we need to go to the housing office with the family, what does doing PuP mean? Well, whatever you're doing, when you're doing PuP, you're doing 3 threads. You're weaving 3 threads through all of your contact with the family. And when you're going to the housing office, you're supporting that parent to develop a positive view of self as parent. And that might be as simple as saying, it's really great that you're ready to go, because I know you really want to sort this out because you're really concerned about the kids. And that makes you a good mom. It's about nurturance. It's about capturing and reflecting back for parents whenever you see nurturance between parent and kids. So it may be nothing more than saying, oh, it's great that you've packed them a sandwich to take. It might be a long time that we're at that housing office and he'll get hungry. I can see how much you care for him. And along the way, you might see a little cheerful smile and say, oh, he's really pleased that you've brought his special lunchbox. And going to the housing office is not going to be straightforward. So maybe before you go in, you say, let's take a deep breath, because last time we went in, it all kind of went pear-shaped. So maybe this time, let's just try and stay calm. And you give me a signal when you think that we need to just step back for a moment and take a few deep breaths. So there we have our 3 threads to help us understand the family's story, to think about the strengths and challenges, and to set collaborative goals. And the process should be therapeutic. It's non-adversarial. It's respectful. I'm now going to move on to the second part of the webinar, where we're going to look a little bit more closely at child self-regulation. Going back to the core of the PuP program, Child Developmental Outcomes, and thinking about self-regulation as being the really important underlying developmental process that helps children learn how to manage their behavior. When we think about child self-regulation, we think about it in terms of top-down processes, specifically executive functions that involve prefrontal and frontal cortex. And we think about it as bottom-up, emotional regulation that is mediated largely by sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So how do you help parents understand what executive functions and emotion regulation are? Well, we actually tell parents quite explicitly exactly what these 3 core components of executive functions are. We talk about working memory, and here we see a little chap staring intently with his little finger pointed, and his little working memory, we can imagine, is working very hard. He's attending, he's listening, he's having to think through and manipulate information and work out what he needs to attend to in a very short period of time. So working memory literally is just working away, sorting through huge amounts of sensory information that we receive on a moment-to-moment, second-by-second basis. Along the way, he's going to need to make some decisions, and perhaps that's going to involve inhibitory control. So this is an overriding and original response that you're likely to make. And it involves exercising self-control. So what we see in children aged between about 4, 5, and 6 is the development both of working memory and inhibitory control. Your little Mr. 6 is learning to stand in line, and when somebody knocks him, he doesn't turn around and give them a good push. He is able to inhibit that prepotent response. And so along the way, his working memory, his attention, and his capacity to manage and regulate and modulate according to the situation is really developing. And a wee bit later on, maybe when he's 6 going on 7, maybe 8, he's going to develop the capacity to start to organize and manage different instructional sets that require him to make some changes along the way. And one of the examples that we often give when we're doing our PuP training is the example of a little Mr. 6-year-old, and he's in grade 1, would be here. And his teacher, Mrs. Brown, says, okay, everybody, I'd like you to pack up your pencils and books and put them in your tidy tray. And then I'd like you to get out your library bag. Now, everybody needs to, first of all, attend to that, put it into working memory. Our little chap is really busy with paints and coloring in a fire engine. He didn't want to stop, but somewhere along the way, if he's going to comply with the instructions, he's going to have to stop doing what he's doing. And then the teacher says along the way, oh, whoops, no, sorry, it's not library day after all, it's music. Don't worry about getting your library bags. So, third piece of complex instructions for little Mr. 6. He's got to do some cognitive shifting. He's got to think, okay, I've got a new instructional set. So all of these are developmental milestones that are really crucial to those early years of schooling. And children who succeed in the very early years of schooling tend to succeed in later years. So how do children go about developing these executive functions, and what can we do as practitioners to support parents to support the development of executive functions? And I'm going to show you a short video here from Adele Diamond, who is probably the world's leading expert on the development of executive function in young children. And this is just a little excerpt from a YouTube video.
So think about what activities require executive functions and challenge them, and provide emotional support, joy, social support, belonging, and you have to use your body. Well, you come up with traditional activities that we've always done. Music, dance, play, sports, things that, people have done since society's been in existence.
So there we had a clear articulation in a very brief moment of some of the things that we do to develop executive functioning. These activities that children engage in are cross-cultural. Every culture has song. Every culture has a tradition of putting movement to rhythm and syncopation accompanied by sound. We all sing and we all dance. And so taking those core constructs that help support the development of executive functions are things that often parents are not really quite aware of. So we have a whole series of exercises in our parent workbook and our online toolkit that are providing you, practitioners and parents, with some ideas. There's nothing prescriptive. It's about using your own creativity and your own judgment about how to make some of these ideas and principles work. But song, for example, singing songs and clapping actually is quite a complicated task when you're 5 and 6. But clapping games are things that children do across the world. So clapping and singing with your child. And along the way, when the parent is clapping and singing and you're doing something fun, you're also enhancing the quality of the caregiving relationship. You're bringing joy and you're helping the parent feel as though they're playing an important and vital role in their child's life. And perhaps along the way, your parent is fully present in the moment. And for just a little bit of time, they can set aside that huge big worry about the housing crisis. So you're using your integrated theoretical framework to try to inform all components of the work that you're doing. And of course, we do need to support children to learn to manage their own emotional state by providing them with an understanding about the words that go with their bodily sensations. And when you can learn how to describe your bodily sensation and you understand the concept of arousal or getting wound up or feeling hypey or whatever the terminology is that suits that particular family, you can then start to introduce the idea of how you can become calm. And one of the other key components, of course, of children learning to become calm is co-regulation. And so in a funny kind of way, what you can do is engage parents who may themselves be emotionally dysregulated in a process of teaching their children to become calm by demonstrating how to be calm and how to learn deep breathing, for example. And here we have a whole series of mindfulness exercises for children that can be done with parents that are not complicated and are totally straightforward. In recent years, we've been collaborating with a number of different research centres across the UK. Our first formal collaboration was with Oxford Social Services and then with the NSPCC, who funded the randomised controlled trial of PuP in the UK. I'd like to introduce you to Jenny Carpenter. Jenny was the implementation support manager and trainer for the NSPCC study, and she's remained with us as the UK coordinator and PuP trainer. So over to Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny Carpenter. I live in Scotland and I work with Parents Under Pressure as the UK coordinator and as a trainer in UK and Ireland. I want to talk about how we do PuP and where we're doing it. We've had the chance to support practitioners implementing the approach across a range of social care and family support agencies, across early intervention, child protection, work around addiction, support with domestic abuse, family homelessness, mental ill health, and criminal justice. Anywhere where practitioners are intervening for parents whose own challenges prevent them providing the home they would like to for their children. I think the PuP approach works well across the range of policy frameworks we have in Ireland and in the UK. With the integrated theoretical framework, Sharon and Paul have articulated a very specific tool that helps practitioners address the needs of an individual family. And the way it works is by offering parents and practitioners a way of taking a close look at family life across the 6 domains of family functioning, identifying strengths as well as challenges, and then thinking, with all of that in mind, why things are happening the way they are at a particular time. And from that, deciding together where the starting points are best going to be to create lasting change. And I think the beauty of this case formulation process is that parents have the relief of feeling helped where they most need it. And for practitioners, it gives a chance to address and target the underlying areas of family functioning to support the lasting chance of change. And it gives a clear rationale for practice. There's an opportunity to do step-by-step goals with a family, tailoring that to individual families' needs, but always grounded in 3 practice threads. Building up the nurturance in the parent-child relationship is one. Secondly, focus on emotion regulation. And thirdly, building up a parent's confidence, their view of themselves as a parent. We've got a PuP online toolkit, lots of workbooks, and across all of those, a lot of information and practice resources really that support practitioners and parents if they want to use those resources, which are spread out on a modular basis. So each module focuses around a particular area of potential family need. I think that the other thing to say probably is that threaded through all of it, the approach comes from an underlying premise that in order to support any behavioural change, first of all, we have to have emotion regulation. And that children, above all, need parents who are in control of themselves and who are emotionally available to them. And I think the last thing I want to say is more of a reflection really on this year in particular. We've been able to take PuP training online, we've been able to provide support online, and I think that in the midst of incredible levels of need, increasing need for vulnerable children and their parents, and that coupled with the huge challenge around engagement and finding support in the midst of lockdown and the impact of the pandemic, that in some way I think practitioners and families are finding that the clarity and the structure of the Parents Under Pressure approach to therapeutic family support means that at some level it gives an anchor and a secure base from which to work from. Thank you very much.
So a lovely piece from Jenny Carpenter. Thank you, Jenny. And I'd like to now move on and introduce you to Anita Harris from Coolmine Therapeutic Community. We've been working with Coolmine for well over 5 years now and have trained their residential support workers, their therapists and their case managers in the PuP program. There's been an independent evaluation that was undertaken by Trinity College, and that's also prompted us to develop a more formal relationship with Coolmine as our Ireland training hub. So, over to Anita.
Good morning all, my name's Anita Harris and I'm the Residential Services Manager with Coolmine Therapeutic Community. I have been working with the PuP approach since 2014, where I trained as a PuP therapist and a PuP supervisor. Following implementation of the PuP approach to women's residential service at Ashley House, we proceeded to implement PuP to our men's residential Coolmine Lodge and across all our Coolmine and day services, including Coolmine House, Drug-Free Day Programme, and the Dublin 15 Community Addiction Team. PuP now forms an integral part of our case management system and is the approach we use to parenting. Many of those who are presenting to Coolmine present with a complexity of needs. In addition to substance abuse issues, many also present with histories of psychiatric issues, homelessness, child protection issues, and family histories of substance abuse. Following implementation of PuP, We evaluated the PuP approach as we deliver it in a very unique way in Coolmine. In addition to one-to-one, PuP is also delivered in the format of a group setting. The feasibility of delivering PuP in a group format had both benefits and challenges. The shared experience of the group format was shared by many and support from specific PuP staff. However, there were challenges. Managing sensitive topics within the group format was difficult at times. Lending support that PuP needed to be delivered in both one-to-one settings in addition to the group programme. What was the impact seen to date of PuP? It is the beginning of an evidence base that is responding to the needs of parents who are drug users, that is more holistic, more truthful, more responsive. However, we measure impact on the lived experience of the participant. So I will leave the last word with a woman who was a participant and who completed the Parents Under Pressure programme. Thank you.
My name's Emma, and my journey to recovery began when I entered Coolmine TC in 2017. I had lost just about everything in my life as a result of my addiction. I had no home or job or friends left, and my partner had left a couple of years previously, taking our son with him. I had been through many treatment programs prior to this, but I believe that the PuP course which I completed in Coolmine was the key piece of work which has given me my life back. It was the first time that I was given a safe space in which I could look openly and honestly at what it was like being a parent in addiction and how I could do things differently going forwards. The guilt and shame that I felt around my relationship with my son is what was keeping me trapped in the past. The PuP therapists helped me to realise that, despite everything that had happened, my son was a happy, healthy, well-cared for little boy. I held myself to an impossibly high standard when it came to parenting him. My core belief was that I had to be the perfect mother, or else he was better off with no mother at all. This is simply not true. I realise now that being a good mother means being present and doing my best on any given day. Like so many other parents, when the schools were closed earlier this year as a result of COVID, I ended up working from home while looking after my son. Some days I managed to get pretty close to being the perfect mother of my dreams, where I did almost everything right and managed to stay on top of working and homeschooling and keeping everything in balance. But there were other days when he got too much screen time and spaghetti hoops on toast for dinner, because I'm not perfect. But no matter what, I'm present and caring, and constantly showing and telling him how much I love him. My worst day of parenting in recovery is still so much better than my best day of parenting in addiction. PuP has helped me to realise that William only has one mum, and I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be there with him and help him feel safe and secure and cared for. I will forever be so grateful to all involved in PuP for helping me to rebuild my relationship with my son and to achieve a stable, sustainable recovery.
The final project I'd like to mention is our PuP for Dads study. This is a collaboration that we're doing with Stirling University. And in our initial feasibility study, we just looked at whether dads would even become engaged in the PuP program. We work with fathers who were on opioid substitution therapy. We found that the program was acceptable, that dads enrolled and kept on coming, and quite a few mums engaged in the PuP program as well. Here you'll see a quote from two of the dads that took part in the PuP for Dads project. And so for us, the next steps in our PuP for Dads work is to investigate funding for a full randomised controlled trial. We are wanting to invite research partners, so anybody in the UK who is interested in joining in this research endeavour, we'd like to invite you to contact us, Anne Whitaker, Jenny Carpenter or Paul to find out further information. So thanks for joining. We're going to run another webinar in February of next year, and we're going to focus on a lot more detail on our PuP for Dads project. So looking forward to communicating with you all in February 2021. Thank you.